This conference will now be recorded.
You notice how he turned that off right when he said you feel like hammered shit?
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's because I'm sorry I didn't get that. I think that would be a great introduction to part of tonight's work. How we doing, guys?
What's up,
Good.
Pretty
bro?
good. Great.
Happy birthday, Chris. A little late.
Right on. Right on.
Chris, Chris, you have to tell us where are you yesterday? Where were you yesterday, Chris?
I was drunk and upside down. In the upside down.
Wouldn't want to hear that it was any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, as you can see, tonight we're coming to you live from the composite
Tennis.
room. So it's going to be a little bit different tonight. You're not going to have all of that really great high quality production value that you have when I'm in the classroom, because I'm trying to get the workbench in this, and you'll be looking at my belt buckle more than anything probably tonight. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to get started here on exercise 2, which is the winglet project. Tonight I'm going to cut out 3 of the pieces and I'm going to show you how to install those onto the winglet. That's going to be basically your first step out of this project. They are the 3 pieces that have to be glued down, and the glue has to set before we can take the iron to them. So what we'll do tonight is I will show you cutting out those 3 pieces, gluing them into place, and then we're done, because it has to wait for the glue to set up, and that's usually an overnight thing. In this case, it'll be until Monday, and on Monday we'll go through shrinking and stitching, so that when you walk in here, you'll be ready to do it. A couple of things on that end. Today, Governor Holcomb announced that they're going to start putting things back starting on the 1st of May, which is a Friday, 2 weeks from tonight. If everything goes according to plan, y'all be back in here 2 weeks from tonight. And by then, we'll be done with all of the lecture and all of the paper projects, so that when you come in here, you'll be doing nothing but projects. I am still planning to bring y'all in here before then, so that we can get hit on it, get ahead of it, so that when the last day rolls around, you're ready to take your final. You'll have had a couple of days to review for it, and we'll be in shape so that the following Monday will be the beginning of the next block. And if everything goes well, we might be back to something close to normal by then. I'm hoping anyway. So to continue on. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this. This is a winglet. And when you're all done, this is what it's going to look like. All covered up, all doped up, all shrunk up, all sewn down, and finally with a coat of paint on it. Because part of this this block is painting. And instead of doing what the project says, to waste a 10-inch square piece of brand new 40 thousandths aluminum, we're going to paint the winglets something real, so that you're actually shooting on the kind of things you would be shooting on with a paint gun. Now, there are probably some among you, there usually is in this class, some experienced painters. I've had professional painters who know a lot more about painting than I do. I can teach you the basics of it. I can tell you how to use a paint gun, how to mix paint. I can tell you all that. Actually applying paint, something of an art form. But on the other hand, I've got a couple of trophies in my garage for paint jobs on cars and bikes that I've done that have been shown. So ain't half bad either. And this is where you're going to get to try it out when we get this done and we're ready to paint. So now, like I said, the production value of this is not going to be the greatest, because I'm going to have to keep walking in and out of it to get to things and to do things. And in order for you to see the workbench, when I stand up, like I said, you'll be seeing my belt buckle. I do have the good microphone in here, but the acoustics in here. What's that?
Not.
The The acoustics in here are also, it's got pretty good echo, so I don't know what it sounds like on your end, but I do have the good microphone sitting here in front of me, and hopefully you're catching me and not so much of the echo. This room is awful empty when there's no one in here, so there's a lot of echoing going on. We'll do our best to keep moving on forward. So with that in mind, before I get started, anybody got anything for me? No? Good. All right. Well, then let's get started. So like I said, first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out 2 of the pieces. Now there's 10 pieces altogether to this project. There's the center piece. That's the big one. That's the one that wraps around the winglet. There's 2 end caps. Those are the other 2 things we're going to cut tonight because they have to be glued down. There's also a piece that will go on the end here that's 2 inches wide and as wide as the winglet. That's the trailing edge cap. There's an 8-inch wide piece that wraps around the front. Leading edge cap. That's your sacrificial cap, the one that takes all the beating from everything that flies into the leading edge of the wing while it's out there. We're only going to cut today the main piece and the 2 side pieces. And we talked a little bit about yesterday that while I've got my wing uncovered, this is the time to start doing the inspection on it, looking at for all the structural defects, obvious defects, damage, mold, rot, mildew, anything that's in there that is going to adversely affect it. This is when you take a look at it because it's open. So now we move on. We're getting ready to start our recovering. So the next thing we got to do, we want to look for anything on here that's going to have a sharp edge or corner or piece of hardware sticking out that could rub through our covering once it's on there. It's cloth. If there's something sharp, it's going to rub through. So overall, your ribs and your stringers, you're going to have that covered with some kind of padding. Generally, for our purposes, we're using duct tape, and duct tape would not be out of the question on a real airplane either. There's a lot of different things you can use, foil, aluminum tape, things of that nature. We're using duct tape because we got it, it's cheap. So I looked this over. All of my rib corners have already been padded with the duct tape all the way over here. Trailing edge, nice and round, and it's been coated in duct tape. Leading edge, I got duct tape over all of it. Serves 2 purposes. It's a protective coating to protect the fabric from the structure of the rib, and dope doesn't stick to it. Dope works by soaking into the fabric. Fabric has to be impregnated. I used that word in a sentence. Impregnated with the dope. It has to soak all the way through all the fibers. It does not soak into duct tape. So it works good for both padding and dope proofing the surface we're going to put this on. Now I look this over. I've got no hardware. The hardware that sticks out on this side is already well padded, taped over. All of my edges are taped over. I come over on this side where my wing spar, in case you were wondering, yeah, that's our simulated wing spar. If you ever work on some aircraft, particularly some of the rotary wing aircraft, this is almost identical, size, shape, and how it mounts to the elevator on a UH-1 helicopter. All right, it's a little bit longer and wider, but what's sticking out is the spar, a round spar, and that's how it mounts to the aircraft. So just for your general fund of information about why this thing is built the way it is, we're calling this our spar sticking out. It's not just a convenient handle to pick it up with and hang it up with while it's drying. But looking over here, I've got 2 bolts sticking out where that plate bolts on. One of them's got a lot of duct tape on it. The other one, if you can see it here, got no duct tape over it. It's unprotected. There's no way to protect my surface, my fabric from the surface. And if you look underneath it, you can see the duct tape is up off of the plate that the elevator spar is sticking out of. And there's a sharp edge right along here. I don't know if you can see it. I'll bring it in closer. Probably not. But anyway, it's there. We have to address that. This is the time to do it. And I'm out of duct tape. Doesn't matter. For our purposes, we can go ahead and just put some masking tape over it. Our biggest concern is that no sharp edges are sticking out. They're going to cause the hardware to rub and tear through our fabric once it's on there. So I'm substituting masking tape because I had some, and in all the projects we've been doing around here, while y'all been at home, we've used up every bit of duct tape we had. I had to put it on the shopping list today. I had to put a few things on the shopping list. Last night was an ugly night. The company kitchen kiosk was turned off and I needed a Pepsi and I didn't get to have my Pepsi. So I was not a happy guy last night because, you know, I was really jonesing for a sugar-free Pepsi. So I wrote Andy an email about it and told him, said, hey, the machine's turned off. I'm not happy. He took care of it. Good guy, our boss. And I say that not just because he might be listening in or he's going to watch this tape later, because, yeah, he has been watching them, but because it's true. If I lie, y'all swear to it, right? Okay, so let me get some of this stuff out of the way. And of course, yes, I do have both my project handout and the Winglet procedure manual, which the Winglet procedure manual should be on the site with all of our class materials. And I will be posting exercise 2 for your gratification so that you can look it over and see what you're going to get into. Got my marker. I've got my pinking shears. This is a lousy pair of pinking shears. Let me get a different pair of pinking shears. There, pair of pinking shears that works. I'll tell you something that with the turnover of instructors and whatnot here, sometimes the classes get taught by guys who aren't quite prepared for it, and they use the wrong tools, which, hey, you know, it happens. Not my place to bitch. Except that they use the pinking shears on the fiberglass, and you don't use the pinking shears on the fiberglass. So they're out there when the fiberglass projects are being done and they get coated up in resin and then they don't work. So then Bob's in here one day before the next time he teaches this block, soaking all the shears in acetone to get the resin off. This one is still good. Just so that you can see how it cuts, gives you that zigzag all the way down. That's what we're looking for, that zigzag there on the edge where I just cut it. The whole purpose of that is if it starts to unravel like that, you get little 1/4 inch pieces off instead of it trying to pull every bit of thread out of the fabric. Nifty, huh? Put my gloves over here because I don't need them yet. Might need my glasses. Yeah, I'll probably need my glasses. Can't see. So here's my roll of Seconite. And we do use Seconite, the actual real stuff. This is actual airworthy Seconite. We're not using factory sectums or anything of that nature. We are using the real thing. First thing I'm going to do, first thing I usually do anyway, I'm going to try to straighten up this a little bit because I'm going to be cutting a long straight piece. Having all of this excess hanging off is kind of a waste of it. One of the things you'll see here in the shop, we have a box full of all these leftover pieces because there's a lot of smaller pieces you cut. There's no need to be cutting them off of the big roll. So I got my fabric laying out here on the cutting mat. So what I need now is a piece as wide as my winglet plus 1 inch so that I have enough to fold over the sides. So we measure that on out. I'm looking at 19 inches. So I want to cut this 20 inches wide. And it has to be long enough to wrap all the way around my winglet with 2 inches extra. Now, if I had a different kind of tape measure, if I had a seamstress tape measure, I'd be able to go in there and measure it and see exactly how long that is, but we ain't seamstresses, we're mechanics. We've got another shortcut we can use to do that. Let me get my fabric all straightened out here. So I said I want to go 20 inches. I'll lay my ruler out, put a mark there. Now I'm doing this sideways on the table. It would probably be easier to turn it the other way, but I don't think I could get it all into the camera, so I'm doing some things a little bit awkward, just so that I can keep it all in the frame, and y'all can see what the hell I'm doing here. And I hope you appreciate my efforts. So, by the way, fabric terminology, going this way. What do we call the fabric in that direction? Woof, warp, or selvage edge? Or is it a bias?
Salvage.
No, selvage edge is the one over here that if you looked at it up close,
Oh,
I'm not
it's
gonna bring it up,
okay.
you'll see that this edge is not only finished, it's got like, it's been heated so that it's stiff. Warp, woof. Warp goes a long way. Woof goes sideways. Bias goes in a diagonal. Now what the difference is in those will be a little clearer in a bit. So I want to try to get these straight, so I'm going to square them off. Off of my selvage edge. The one thing you can count on with this is that unless it's gotten all twisted up, the selvage edge is always going to be a fairly straight line. My starting edge is not all that straight, so I'm going to end up cutting this twice probably, but I'm not going to be too concerned about it at this point. I'll get that later. I got another little trick to show you once I get to that point. But I definitely want this line to be straight. Yeah. Well, you can tell I know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah, I could see everything.
So when you start cutting this, you want to try to keep it so it's laying flat, but you don't want to pull too much on it, because if you do, it'll start, the fabric will start to stretch and your cuts won't be straight. So you want it to lay relaxed, you know, chill, having a beer. My fabric's a lot more relaxed than I am. Now, come on, you got something to laugh about, you better be sharing it, because I could use one.
Joe's got the hookup.
I just realizing how this like an old 80s Mr. Wizard episode and you one of his special guests or something.
I'm looking at it thinking, you know, I've seen better YouTube videos of how to do stuff, but then I'm thinking on the other hand, you know, if I post this on YouTube, you know, maybe I get a couple of thousand hits and they send me a check. And if you do, well, you know, then that's another round on Bob. Actually, I'd be there at the west side going, the next round's on YouTube. All right, so I got that line. I know that line's going to be reasonably straight. So I get all my toys off of here so that I can move this around. And I'm going to bring it up to the edge of my board here, my cutting mat. Now, these cutting mats have little 1-inch squares all over them. I can come back down, double check my 20-inch measurement, which I left a little bit extra on. And if I have this lined up on the edge over here, I look down here and I can see where that 20-inch line is on the mat. And I want this pretty straight. So coming down, I find my 20, and I can look and I can see it through the fabric. There's my 20-inch line. Right there. I can see my line on the board. You know what? I can't see it on my ruler because I can't see. There it is. 20 inches there. So y'all have been in this room before and you've seen them. We've got the roller cutters in here, and a lot of folks want to try to cut this stuff with a roller cutter. Can't do it, guys. This stuff will not cut with a roller cutter. It'll actually just tear up the blade on the roller cutter, which when you think about how sharp that thing is, it's a rolling razor blade, and it'll slice the hell out of your hand without any trouble. But if you try to cut this with a roller cutter, all it does is bunch up and flatten the blade. There's my 20, another 20. Yeah, that beginning line wasn't quite straight. You can see that now. If this was YouTube, there'd be a commercial right now. Advertising something made in China that you don't need anyway. I figured I'd try to get my sponsors to be, like sex toys. Something useful. So whoever comes in here to cut their first long piece off, you're lucky because I squared off and straightened the line at the end of the roll. I have to go back and straighten it all out. But that's okay because we're having fun. I'm in the shop doing something, which for me is fun. I'm going to turn this around so I'm working right-handed. And these are pinking shears, so I'm not cutting, I'm pinking. Maybe I can get a guest spot on Sewing with Nancy. And now Bob will demonstrate the pinking shears. These are always important that you're using your pinking shears when we're quilting. Otherwise, your little granny squares might come unraveled and it would totally fuck up your quilt.
Sounds like you know where the next paycheck's coming from.
Hey. No, it's like I said, you don't know where the next paycheck's coming from. I may be guest hosting a sewing show on PBS before it's all over. It's either that or I'm going down to Leon's. I'm going to get me a white 3-piece suit, find me a UHF station, become a TV preacher. Friends, and you are my friend. All right, so now I got this reasonably straight. There's many a soul that needs this, so send them letters and cards to Jesus. That's JESUS, friends, in care of Bob in Indianapolis. All right, so let's see if I can slide this down. Maybe you can see a little better there. So you see I'm folding this over that trailing edge, and I'm going up about 2 inches, okay? So you see that. I also wonder how much noise the microphone is picking up with the scissors, the shears, and me sliding stuff around. Can't be helped, man.
Oh, it's not that bad.
So fold it over like that. And now what I want to do, I want to cut this off so that it comes to the end of my trailing edge back here. So when I wrap it around, that first part is going to be glued to the trailing edge of the winglet. I'm going to pull it around and glue it down on top so that the top piece is on the trailing side. There's no place for wind to catch up underneath that seam and try to pull it up. Makes sense, right? Yep. So there I am. I'm going to grab my square just because I like to try to keep everything neat and square. I am a Freemason. We're all about being on the square. I got that in there. And I got it marked. So I'm going to cut off of the long piece here. I want to make sure I mark which one is the one I've measured so it doesn't get confused. Seen it happen. Gone through, took the wrong side of the piece they cut off, went to glue it all down, and nothing fit. So I'm all about let's mark it. So I picked this edge. There you have it. There's my centerpiece. Just so that you see, I got enough here to cut another centerpiece out with enough left over for one of the end caps.
I call
One of the
dibs.
advantages of doing this stuff, laying it out properly and measuring it carefully, is that you waste less material, which I know it doesn't mean a whole lot to you now, but as I've been known to preach, Brother Bob, that when it comes to saving the company money, there's the two attitudes. there's the attitude of the folks that go, hey, it's the company's money, I don't care. And the rest of us who figured out long ago that you save the company a couple of $100, maybe you get a raise next year. I'm all about getting the raises because this was never a hobby to me. This is my job, you know, fixing airplanes. So my end caps, we have a template. I don't know if you can see it here. I'll flash it in the light a little bit, hold it up a little closer. This is the template we have. We only have one now. It's on my list of things. I'm going to go out and cut some more out of metal. So I lay my template out on the material. And we're using those skills that we all acquired in kindergarten. Tracing. I'm going to trace that puppy out twice. So I got one here. I'm going to trace out another one over here out of this piece of scrap. That was scrap with an S, not crack with a K. And crap, of course, as you all know, if you've been with me before, is a technical term in our business to describe pretty much everything, including the raise you get if you waste all the company's money. All right, so now I'll rough these out just to make them a little easier to work with. There's more scrap. I wouldn't really worry too much about getting your corners all rounded off nice and pretty. It's not really necessary.
So you put a pink edge on everything?
Yes, sir. Everything you cut. Now, if you were taking this off of that bolt and you were cutting at the selvage edge or at the warp edge, you would want to. The selvage edge, you wouldn't have to because it's finished. All right. This came off the selvage edge, so I didn't pink the bottom of it. You can feel it. You can see it, that it's seamed there so that it won't start unraveling. If I were taking it off the other side, off of the warp edge, I would want to pink that edge, even though it's cut nice and straight, because if it's not pinked, it can unravel there. Now, is that critical with small airplanes, small part, things like that? Probably not. But you're the one who's going to sign your name on it, and you're the one that wants to finish it. And when you start doping, if it starts unraveling, and this applies both to fabric coverings for airplane, the polyfiber fabric covering for airplanes, and when we get into composites, you don't pink the edges in composites, but when you start applying the resin to the mat or the fabric, if the end starts unraveling, it makes a gooey mess out of the resin. Does the same thing here when we start applying glue and dope. If you've got a lot of ravelage coming off the edge threads, it gums up and it makes a mess. That particular characteristic of working with fabric and resins and glues, though, does work to our advantage in some cases. But you're going to have to wait to get how it does, because that's part of composites, and we ain't there yet. No, I was just thinking, you know, I'm in the composite room all by myself. There's no one around. I could probably light up a smoke right about now and nobody's ever going to know. And, you know, of course, that means that later on tonight, Andy won't be able to sleep, and he'll go in and pull up my recording and he'll watch it. He'll be having a cigarette in the composite room, and then somebody else will be finishing this class, and they may not be as much, you know, fun and entertaining like I am. All right, so there we are. Elapsed time, start to finish to this point, both pieces are cut out right around 35 minutes. And, you know, part of that was me straightening out the roll and trying to explain this while I'm trying to do it, so it eats a little more time. But to give you an idea, it took about a little over 30 minutes to cut out 2 pieces. So that gives you an idea of what kind of time you're going to be looking at on this project. Why is that important? Well, for you, it's not. For me, I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to keep track of how much time it is so I can figure out how many hours I got to sneak y'all into the building next week to do this. Just me, my thing. Okay. So I've got my pieces cut. Let's go ahead, take a minute, give them a look, see how they fit, double check. Okay, so my centerpiece wraps around, goes all the way to the trailing edge just like it should. I got about a 1/2 inch hanging out on both sides. My centerpiece is good. End cap number 1, I lay it on there. End cap number 1, just a little bit bigger than the end cap. End cap number 2 is going to go on the side. Can you see it? There it is. I'll bring it in closer. There it is. All right, so end cap number 2 is the one that's got the spar sticking out, and I got to get this over it. So how do we do that? Well, this is the way we do that. This is old airplane mechanic trick. So I figure out about where, when I lay that on there, the spar is going to be. Do I have to cut out a perfect hole where the spar is going to be? Nah, I just find that spot, fold it in half, take my shear, and I cut a little bit of an X into it. Cut it that way, fold it the opposite direction, cut it that way. And then when I go to put it on, the X will tear out and it'll go right over. Neat, huh? Of course it is. All right. I'm going to take my hanging wire off of here just so it makes it a little easier for me. So now we've got the 3 pieces that we need to glue down on here, all cut, ready to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my excess material the hell out of the way so that we don't get any glue onto it. Don't want to waste a whole roll of material. There's my centerpiece, my 2 side pieces. So now I'm going to move my microphone over here, which means I'll probably drop it at some point and you'll hear a loud thud. Get my template out of the way. I'm going to take my cutting mat up. And I'm going to put my cutting mat back on top of the fire cabinet. Why? Because I don't want glue on my cutting mats. I don't want fiberglass resin on my cutting mats. And although cutting mats are covered in fiberglass resin and glue. So now, according to your assembly manual, you're going to cement your pieces down using F8294 Rando Bond, thin with 286 nitrate thinner. We don't have Rando Bond. What we use is this. Super Seam Consolidated. Consolidated is the company that makes Seconite. They recommend this glue. You can use the other stuff. You can use any approved glue. That says I can thin that with my nitrate thinner. I like to thin it out when I'm doing this just because it's a little easier to work with. It makes a little less mess. Making sure I got everything together that I need. I've got my brush. I got a cup. And since I'm thinning it, I got Mr. Tongue compressor.
Hey, Bob, is that Seconite 100% polyester?
What's that?
Is that Seconite 100% polyester?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Of course, it's, depending on what, I actually have the sheet for it hanging on the wall in here. I have to look up what the exact mess is. So before I start working with chemicals, next step, I have to de-bling. Because this glue is strong. I don't want to get it on my stuff. My nifty Masonic ring and my artificial silver-plated plastic turquoise ring. The other bracelet stays on. But I tell you, these disposable gloves are cool. I started out in the business, you didn't have them. If you had rubber gloves at all, they were real thick, heavy ones that you had to reuse and reuse until they were so badly glued up they wouldn't work anymore. This is a relatively new thing, the disposable glove things. It's been about 20 years. See, y'all are spoiled. So I take my cup, I put a little of my Rando Bond in. It's not going to take much to do this whole thing. So I don't want to put a lot in there. And I'm going to be thinning it, so I don't need a lot because I'm thinning it. So there's that. My nitrate dope thinner, don't need much. Now really what I would normally do, I would pour this into another cup so I could dole it out as a thinner a little easier than trying to pour it out of a 5-gallon jug. And I would do that just because I'm demonstrating this. And, you know, if I want to get picked up from my YouTube video, you know, be doing shaving cream commercials and stuff, I better do it right, huh? So that's the one that moves slow. That's the glue. Gonna add just a little bit of the nitrate thinner in there. So I want it to spread fairly thin. And what I also want is it to be thin enough that it soaks into the material, because that's how it adheres, by soaking into the material that you're trying to put down. My side pieces out of the way. Now, when we do this here in the shop, this is about where the cussing starts. Because they get glue all over their fingers, and they're trying to lay the piece out, and the piece is sticking to their fingers because they're covered in glue. Ah, yeah, fun stuff, good times. Yeah, like I said, that's where the cussing starts. As I'm trying to move it, I'm tearing the paper up off of the. So I laid that down the top part to about where I'm going to want it to end up when I'm done. Give my wing a little tug there to make sure everything's straight and tight. Take a look at it. Make sure I'm flat. I got even amount of overhang on both sides. So now it's time. Take a little bit of my glue. I have a way I do things, and that's because I've been doing this a while. So I tend to want to put the glue onto the fabric and not all over, because I want a little more control with it. I don't want it slopping everywhere. And if you get the glue too much, too many places on the outside, when you go to dope it, it'll, hello?
Hey, Bob,
Yeah,
quick question.
yes, sir.
Since all of us are not on camera, is there any way you can, is there any way you can expand your own coverage to fill up the whole screen, since we are not coming out on camera? Like making your screen to
Hey,
be
Moses.
bigger.
Moses,
Yeah.
go up to the top. It says, hold on. It says like view everyone, or view who's talking, active cameras, or hide everyone.
Uh-huh.
I just clicked on active cameras because Bob's the only one with an active camera, and he's my whole screen.
Yeah, that does it. Hey, I can see. I had it the other way so I could see who was in here, but I can see a little better now what you can see on the screen.
Airplane. What is it?
Oh, okay. See,
Hey!
what is it?
It's not a mommy. It's an apple.
And I got my glue across the bottom.
No, mommy. It's a bee. It's an ant. It's an ant.
Oh, good.
That's the next generation of airplane mechanic I hear.
Ìwọ ni ìwọ ló respond látọ̀dọ̀ ẹ̀.
Nítorí kì í ṣe ẹ̀mí ò débẹ̀ rí.
Òun náà ni mo sọ.
Ṣùgbọ́n ẹni tó sọ̀rọ̀.
Ẹni tó sọ̀rọ̀ ọ̀bẹ nǹkan tó bí
Moses,
dáhùn bí
mute your
ìbá ní
mic.
kò respond yẹ. Ìbá sọ
Oh,
fún mi máa respond yẹ.
Moses,
Yeah.
can you keep your microphone, please?
All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, you're good, man.
So just a little bit of glue on the back side of that, and it tacks. I don't want it gluing down hard. I just want enough to kind of hold it in place. Now I apply glue to the other side, all the way down to the edge. Now this is like any other contact cement. It works best sticking to itself. So I put some on that side of the fabric. Then I take the side that I'm going to be gluing down. I'm going to lay it out flat here on my bench, and I'm going to spread about an inch wide strip of glue on the side that I'm going to be gluing down. Now that, you can probably see it if you look real close there in camera. You can see how you can tell when it's soaking into the fabric. You start to see the paper come up from the other side because the fabric's wet all the way through. You look right along there, you see how the color changes. That's what you're looking for. That means your fabric has the glue soaked all the way through. Pull it up. I want to stretch it as tight as I can, and then lay it down on there. Smooth it out. You might have to pull it back up to get it right. If you get wrinkles underneath, it's all right. Unlike Yellow Death, this stuff, you can pull it up a couple of times before you get there. Okay. My covering's there. I don't want to mess with that too much. Now, on my end caps, same thing. I need to fold those over. Now, before I do, I want to check and see if I still got a pretty even line all the way around. And I do. I got about a ½ inch on either side. So now I take my glue. I don't want to be slopping glue all over onto my wing. I want to try to just put it on the material itself all the way around. And once I've got that, starting here at my trailing edge, start folding it down and smoothing it. Now it will pucker. If you have excessive puckering, and you think you need it, you can always make relief cuts. You can take and just cut a line there so that when you fold it over, it'll lay flat. I don't think I'm gonna need it. If it's wet enough, I can fold little bits over and it'll be fine. If you need a little more glue, you can put it in there. But like I say, try not to get excessive with the glue because the dope won't soak through the glue as well. And that's what we want. When we start applying dope, we want that dope to be able to soak through the fabric. So I got that down. I'm gonna take my extend cap. Same thing, instead of slopping glue all over my wing, I'm gonna put the glue on my end cap. Of course, I'm starting to get it on the bench and things are starting to get sticky. Take it again and brush it on the outside of my fabric for my centerpiece. Because again, it sticks to itself better than it sticks to the fabric. So I get a nice light coat all the way around. Take my end cap and lay it over. Now where I've got all that excess from my centerpiece all the way around, now I'm covering it. And I've got a nice smooth edge all the way around. Some of it'll pull up over the top, push it down. Remember, the trick is we're not gluing the fabric to the rib, we're gluing the fabric to itself, which is what we want. So, turn it around. You can see the other side. Let's see if I can prop that up a little bit so it's a little easier to see. I need a little more glue. I'm gonna step over here. Put a drip more in there. A little more of my nitrate thinner. I'm gonna repeat the process over here. Trying to put the glue up underneath the fabric. Was that the brake bell? See, it really wouldn't do much good to be putting glue all over the rib anyway, because we've dope proofed it. We don't want the dope sticking to it. We don't want the glue sticking to it. And if dope won't stick to it, the glue doesn't stick to it very well either. So I pull those sides down, taking a little bit for this to get sticky. Glue my outside. And I think you can see, if you're looking here, you'll notice, you can tell where the glue starts to soak through the fabric. And that's what we want to see, that the fabric itself is fully impregnated with the glue. Okay, now before you put glue on the side that you cut the hole in to go on here, make sure you're lining it up correctly. Otherwise, it's going to be backwards, and that's not good. Same thing as before, I want, all the way around my edge, I want to see that color change that lets me know that my glue has fully soaked through the fabric. That's how I know that I'm going to get good adhesion. When you see it turn dark, you know that you've got that adhesion. You're going to get the adhesion because the glue is all the way into the fabric. This one can be a little trickier if you don't make your hole big enough. I like the hole tight because it gives me a nice tight fit, but it also makes it, and putting this piece on, a little more of a trick. And if you don't get it centered right, which I didn't, might take a little bit of stretching to get it where you want it. But remember, the end cap, you want it over the pieces from the centerpiece. And another reason we don't want to get too heavy on the glue is that when we go to shrink this, it'll affect how well it shrinks up. So there you have it. That one's sticking out a little bit, but not too bad. Get that under there. Get down. Oh, might have a blowout. Blowout! It's sticking on my gloves. Like I said, that's when the cussing starts, is when things start sticking to your gloves. All right, so we'll give that a brush down. Use the brush to help smooth it out. All right. So there you have it. That's pretty much your first shop day on this project. At that point, there's not much else you can do as far as actually on the piece. You have to wait for the glue to set up. So while we're letting that set up, we can start cutting our other pieces. I wanted to get that done You, when you do it, you'll probably go ahead and cut all your pieces at once and then go back and start gluing. Me, I wanted to get the gluing down and then come back just because it's a better use of my time and yours. So what do we have left to cut? Well, we've got our leading edge and our inspection covers, our grommet covers and our inspection grommet cover, which is sticking to the table. I can't get it up. Here we go. There it is, Bob. Bitching about not being able to get it up. So again, we have our grommets. That's the one for the inspection port. And we have our eyelet. That is your drain for the trailing edge of your wing.
Your entire crew.
Those pieces to cut. Now for our trailing edge, because our trailing edge has to be a 2-inch wide piece. Like I said the other night, we have the pre-cut surface tapes. They're already 2 inches wide or 3 inches wide. All you have to do is cut the length. So we don't have to sit there making long cuts. You need 4 of these, 3 surface tapes. One's going to go over the rib where you do your stitching, 1 on each side where the two pieces come together from the center and the end caps. Then you got that 8-inch wide piece that has to go the full length, full width of your wing. And it just so happened that the leftover piece I had that I cut earlier, which we already know is cut to the width of my wing. Well, I have at least 8 inches of that I can cut off. Great, I grabbed the metric one. So that has to be 8 inches wide. 5, 6, 7, 8, there's my 8. So I cut off my leading edge cap. Now this was 20 inches wide because our wing is 19 inches wide and I want a 1/2 inch overhang. But when I make my leading edge cap, I want it the exact width of the wing. So eventually, before I install that, I'll be cutting an inch off of one end. Not going to do it right now. So then I come back in. Our surface tape, our trailing edge tapes, we're going to take them right off the roll. We don't have to screw it. For my inspection grommet, my drain grommet. The drain grommet is about 1 1/8 wide. We have templates that are 1/4 inch bigger. And it needs to be at least 1/4 inch bigger than the grommet you're putting in. So I've got that one. Now, cutting with pinking shears in curves is a bit of a challenge because they don't like the curve because they're not exactly cutting a straight line. And odd as that may seem, trying to cut a circle with a pair of scissors that don't cut a straight line can be a bit of a challenge. So you kind of got to work with it a little bit, kind of learn how to give it a little bit of a pull as it's biting. And you'll get your circle. All right, that's my drain cover. Next, I've got my inspection port grommet. I need to be 1/4 inch bigger than that. It's not critical. You can eyeball it. I generally, if I'm doing something like this, I'm just going to mark my circle, because I learned how to trace in kindergarten. Francis E. Bellamy Elementary School, Rome, New York. Where I was living when I was in kindergarten. And then I just eyeballed that I'm 1/4 inch at least outside my circle. This doesn't have to be perfectly round. We're not taking points off if it's not. and it has to be at least 1/4 of an inch bigger. You can go bigger. You could also cut this as a square. You don't have to do it as a circle. You could just cut a square big enough to cover that spot and dope it down. Perfectly acceptable. It's just not as cool. And, you know, cool. We're about being cool. So there you can see it. Once it's done, that exceeds the outside of my circle by 1/4 of an inch. There it is. All of my pieces are now cut. So from this point on, all we've got to do is wait for the glue to set up. So, breaks over. So come Monday. On Monday, once my glue is set up completely, I'll be getting the iron out and we'll go over how to shrink this. Now, we do have some of those small seam irons that they showed you in that video that you were all diligently watching. None of you are sitting there with the camera off, snoozing, sparking up a blunt, copping a beer, whatever. I know you're all watching it, so you saw that. So what I will demonstrate on Monday is first how to calibrate the irons, because they have to be calibrated. This is aviation. We don't guess at anything. We have to measure everything. And that includes those regular dollar store clothes irons that we use to shrink the material. As you saw, the guy who invented all this did it, so it could be done with those. And really, there's nothing really better to do it with than a clothes iron, but you have to know what the temperature is, and there's some tricks to that. So I will demonstrate how to calibrate it, and then I will demonstrate the shrinking. Once that's done, we start applying dope. That's when it gets fun and messy in here. And since, you know, I'll be doing this, and if I'm wearing a respirator, you'll never understand a word I'm saying. It means I get to sit here and get a cheap high out of it. That pretty much covers everything. And so I did go over, you know, what the governor had to say today and what Andy had to say about it. I need y'all to be watching your emails over the next day or two. And if you haven't heard from me, then Monday, looking into it. I am going to try to bring y'all in here on Monday. Unless I get shut down at the last minute. We're spread apart enough in here. We have this huge exhaust fan sucking everything you breathe out up in it. So I think we would be safe to come in here and actually work the project. Again, if I go that route, it is totally voluntary. I am not forcing anybody to come in. If you're not feeling well, if you're really afraid you're going to catch the bug, can't say I blame you. I'm not going to force you to come in. You know, we have time built into this to catch up later. So I kind of leave it up to you if you want to come in on Monday. Again, watch for the email from me to say, yes, come in, no, don't, because I'm still waiting on a last minute, don't do it. Yeah, I don't exactly have permission to do this, but, you know, I'm looking at the way things are. If we can bring 10 people in here to take their finals, if they're all spread out, then I should be able to have 6 of you in a shop full of noxious chemicals spread out. And I think I want to try that. If you're all up to it, you know, if you guys don't want to do it, if you want to ride this out and do the projects at the end, totally fine. So I'll kind of leave it up to you on that one. Again, I'm waiting for a final, just don't do it. If I don't get that, I'll let you know. Let's say Monday morning before noon, I'll send out an email saying, yeah, come in tonight at 6. When you do come in now, I want everybody to come in through the door, through the old avionics shop, that, you know, area that's usually locked up and blacked out where classroom 9 and 10 are. Come in through that door and go straight into the composite room. So that'll minimize everybody's exposure to everyone and everything else, and vice versa. We'll come in here, we'll have the exhaust fan going, we'll have the door open, the big door open to vent fresh air in. I think we'll be okay. But again, I'm an airplane mechanic, not a doctor. You know how it is, man. Man, if anybody's afraid of the cops stopping them for being out and driving around when you're not supposed to be out driving around, I get that too. Because, you know, I, like some of you, really need to minimize my exposure to the guys in the 4-door sedans, if you know what I mean. All right. Anybody got any questions about anything we did tonight?
Nope.
All right, guys. I don't have any other projects to hand out or any other paper
Yeah.
weeks. So next I will post this project. If I haven't already, I will post the procedure manual and a couple of other things onto the SharePoint site for this class. And once again, this class is recorded. And I got one that's not here, and he notified me he wouldn't be here, so I'm not even going to bother reading the questions out loud. I'll just send him an email. Chris, watch your email. I'll send you the 3 questions you need to answer for viewing the other video from last night.
Okay.
All right, all that having been said,
Can you
guys.
get that one?
What's that?
No,
Hey, Bob,
Yes, sir.
it's not. a box.
nice presentation.
It's
Thank
not
you.
an efficient.
Well, it wasn't too bad. I'm going to watch it later, and if it's halfway, I'm going to post it on YouTube, see if we can make a couple of bucks.
Do it.
So again, guys, it looks like they may be getting ready to open things back up, and if that's the case, 3 weeks from now, first round's on me.
Oh, I'm down for that.
Have a good weekend, guys. Stay safe, do the whole thing. Hope everybody has a good weekend, and I'll see you again on Monday.
All right.
All right,
Bob.
later, Bob.
Yep. That's it. Later.
Recording off.